Okay, Gary, are you able to hear me?
I am now. Thank you.
Okay.
I wanted you to, given that Lisa's asking questions, I didn't know under the Brown Act if we were allowed to respond or not.
So, I mean, in general, you can respond briefly to topics raised during the general public comment that's reserved for items not on the agenda. If it's going to be an expansive discussion, then my advice would be to continue it or to have us bring back an item at the next meeting to address the topic more directly, with the opportunity for members of the public that might be interested in it to know in advance so they can participate and listen in. Yeah. I mean, unless we have fairly brief comments in response, I think it's better to bring this back to the extent that there's a board desire to do that. Yeah, that's basically it.
Thank you, Phil. I think it's an eminently fair question, and given Lisa's now years, as I recall, of involvement with this issue, is something we owe to her. But I'd rather bring it back absent an objection. I realize I'd only make sure wait longer, but at least we'd be able to respond substantively.
And, I was just looking back at the agenda. I mean, it may be possible to address some of the issues raised as part of the discussion on the strategic planning session item. So I think there's an opportunity there for folks to weigh in with, their perspective on where things are heading in their own jurisdictions.
Okay, well, that's fair enough. That's an adroit maneuver. I appreciate that.
I agree.
Okay. Is there anyone else who has a public comment?
No additional hands raised.
Well, I don't know what is happening with this connection. It's going crazy. Anyway, okay. Then we'll close out public comment and move to the items. I think it's 6, the strategic planning session.
Yes, thank you.
All right, Jeff, please kick it off.
Take it away. All right. Can you see the slideshow? Perfect.
Yes.
All right, let me pull my view back up here. Okay. Thanks everyone for joining us today. My name is Joanne Van Hoosier. I'm a management analyst with the County Administrator's Office. And today I'll be facilitating a strategic planning session for the JPA. So this is our trustee work plan for the JPA. We've established our baseline understanding of the current state. So we're in the second of the 3 phases, which is developing the strategic plan. The JPA has conducted a preliminary effort on developing a strategic plan back in December 2020. So this meeting incorporates the feedback from that session and hopefully we'll add to it. And if the JPA members so choose, the members can finalize a vision and mission for the JPA today. Continue to the next slide. Trying to get all of my windows on the right screen. So first, we're going to just quickly review some strategic planning terminology to guide our session today. And then we'll be discussing each draft statement and having a discussion and brainstorming. So our definitions. First, the vision. Vision is how we'll describe where the JPA would like to be in the next 3 to 5 years. A mission will identify the goals of our organization, what services we provide and who we provide them to. And goals will be pulled from the mission statement, and they'll be something that we can use to develop qualitative targets and to develop objectives, strategies, and tactics to move the organization forward. So we'll start with a vision statement, and this is a draft, a starting point for the JPA to take. And then on the next slide, there's some discussion topics and kind of thought exercises to go through. So The example vision statement is that animal services in Yolo County are a fiscally sustainable community partnership that facilitates the best outcomes for animals and people. And this will stay on the screen as we continue to the next slide. So we've got that as kind of our jumping off point. And so the discussion items are just brainstorming what the JPA's major aspirations are for animal services over the next 3 to 5 years, what words might describe the JPA's vision of animal services, and what the JPA sees as the greatest challenges facing animal services. And note that when we're developing this strategic plan, this is specifically for the JPA, not for Yolo County Animal Services as a department, but specifically for the JPA. So I open it up to the JPA members for your feedback and brainstorming.
I guess I'll start. I've felt like since this started several years ago that the biggest thing we were looking for is to find a path towards a new shelter or a vastly improved shelter, along with a better public-private partnership to help with the management and the running of the facility to help reduce the cost. So that's what this whole thing started from, was a desire to see us, get some form of a new shelter and more public participation in the animal services. So that's my 2 cents on where I think we need to be concentrating. And as Lisa pointed out, we've kind of drifted away from that over the last couple of years. I think we need to get back on course with that. Thank you.
Other thoughts?
Supervisor Provenza?
Thank you. I agree with Wade. We did start out with a vision for a new animal shelter, and that didn't come from just out of the blue. It came from several studies that indicated that all the other things that we want to do in terms of fiscally, whether it's a fiscally sustainable program or animal services that are most protective of animals, whatever those goals are, cannot occur with a current shelter. That this is something that's going to be need to be replaced with one that will facilitate all the other goals. Now, that doesn't mean there can't be shorter term goals while that process is going forward. I think this began with Jacob's study. It's the heaviest study that I have in my office. It cost $250,000 for the study to be done by the county. And then there were several studies that looked specifically at animal services and identified the fact that we cannot really go forward with the success that we'd like to achieve unless we have a new shelter. So I think in the vision, in the mission, everywhere else, we need to state that specifically. We need to make that a goal, and we need to concentrate on it. I will point out that recently there have been some grant money, state grant money for shelters, but in order to get there, you have to have something you're proposing, and you have to have a plan. So that's where we need to get to. So, and then we need to be creative about how to get there. And then we could be making other changes in the process in terms of governance, in terms of how we operate, ways to operate more effectively and efficiency. We can do both, but the fundamental underpinning was and should still be the creation of a new animal shelter for Yolo County. Thank you.
Others?
I'm happy to jump in.
Go ahead.
Sure. So I'm one of the newer members of this panel and started a few months ago. And as you've seen at each meeting, I've asked a number of detailed and specific questions. I appreciate greatly the detailed responses that we have been getting from staff. I have asked for additional information. For example, I'd like to better understand the public-private partnership angle that was referenced just a few moments ago. In particular, on a couple occasions, I've asked to see if our UC Davis partners would be ready, willing, and able to talk to us in one of these meetings, as just one example. In terms of, do we make a decision to build a new shelter, or is it about refurbishing what we've got, or something in between? I have a lot of questions about that. And we all face a very significant issue that's hanging out there and you can't ignore, which is we are still struggling to provide a shelter, a year-round shelter for human beings. We haven't done it yet. There's been a lot of work in a lot of our communities. And I give credit to our county partners for being helpful. I'm impressed with some of the things Woodland has been able to do. We had a overnight winter shelter in Davis and ran into a management problem with our nonprofit partner. And we're rebooting and trying to figure that all out. And we're looking at other options like sanctioned camping, and we've made those things a Davis City Council goal to try to see those things through the end. And that honestly is my priority, but it doesn't mean the humane treatment of animals is not also an important moral imperative as well. And I think our council sent a signal about how we feel about this, because we did use ARP funding that we just approved a few weeks ago for DPAW to ensure that there are appropriate animal services for our homeless in town, which helps take care of animals. But what it also helps do is clear away a barrier to some of our homeless being willing to come into settings where we can provide permanent solutions to move them on and up. So I'm looking for more information, but I'm ready and willing at any time to take back to my council the question of what do they want to commit to?
Thank you, Dan. Other thoughts? Well, I'll share with you my perspective. Is still a relative newcomer to this committee, but as a longtime resident of the county, there's been a lot of talk for years about a new county shelter. And I've never seen any of it materialize. I'm not sure what the reason for that is, but I just haven't. Part of the problem here is, quite frankly, everyone keeps waiting for the city of West Sacramento to join, and I don't believe that's ever going to happen. So what that means is that you have three cities, Davis, Woodland, and Winters, that might be willing to go in together on a animal shelter, but that's a very low population. I think that most of the cities have perpetually struggled with animal control funding. They feel like they don't understand it. They feel like they can't afford it. And certainly some of the work that's been done, Joanna's work, has been illustrative in that regard, has been helpful. But generally, I think they feel like it's nothing that people necessarily embrace. It's more like the elected officials see it as a obligation that they are forced to undertake, but they don't really bring any passion to it. I think that waiting for UC Davis as well, I've been told by at least one UC Davis dean of the School of Vet Medicine that there's just not going to be any commitment there. And I've, other than what we currently have now, I don't have reason to expect more than that. I think we all recognize that UC Davis has the fiscal resources, et cetera, but they've never chosen to employ them in that way. And so I think we just have this challenge around the lack of consensus about what it is that we're looking at, who's going to finance it, and who's going to get it done in short order. I don't feel like we've been able to close the door on that. That's why I've seen the notion of sort of upgrading our current facility as our best hope, because at least there might be some preliminary funding there. I would like to have a better animal shelter. I'd be willing to pay for it, but I'm just one person. I'm not sure how the city, Woodland City Council would vote if that were put to them. So, but it seems to me like what is needed, seems to me like what is necessary. So the issue becomes how much are we going to spend and how are we going to spend it? And I think that no one wants to see those fiscal challenges grow. No one wants to pay more money. And so that remains problematic. That's kind of my view.
Chair Sandy, this is Myra Vega.
Hi, Myra.
Hello, sorry about the video. I'm not sure what's going on, but thank
You're
you
coming
for
through
sharing.
clear now.
Thank you for sharing your perspective. And I would say, generally speaking, that you kind of covered right on how the city of Woodland feels. And I think some of the heartburn that we have is just the cost, how there's escalation year over year, and it's just there's a sense of not too much not a lot of adequate planning on how to reduce the increasing costs, right? And they're exponential. So it's a challenge for us. And, I think our community, I see the woman who spoke at public comment. Yes, in our Woodland, in our Woodland community, we have a lot of community members and nonprofits that are very active and very passionate about caring for our animal population. I think we have to come up with a plan that's sustainable and that is not an ever-growing significant financial burden on the city. So that's kind of my add to some of the comments that Member Carson and Chair added.
Thank you, Mayor Vega. Appreciate your candor. Is anyone else?
See, Supervisor Provenza has his hand raised.
Well,
Jim?
yes, thank you for those comments, and I do appreciate that the fiscal concerns, but at the same time, I don't think it's an either or. I think we can be working on, for example, spay and neutering programs would reduce the amount of animals and reduce the calls for services. Looking at ways to not call animal services, but utilize other alternatives in the city, in a way that Davis does now. Might not work everywhere, but we could look at that. So I think we could be looking at cost cutting. We can be looking at making services more efficient. But in the long run, we're going to need a new shelter. I think in the long run, it will cost more to continue to put Band-Aids on that antiquated structure that we have now. We could sink a bunch of money in now, then 10 years from now, we'll still need a new shelter. So my suggestion is that we make it part of our goal and that we identify a shelter that would be adequate for whatever cities are going to agree to participate. And then we set forth to obtain the money. There's many ways to do it. As I mentioned before, the governor had put money on the table for construction of shelters. There's other sources of funding out there. We could ask, in pending developments, we could ask developers to contribute. But if we don't put it out there and we don't have a plan, it will never happen. And then 10 years from now, we will have spent a lot of money, and then we'll be talking about building a new shelter, or maybe have to build a new shelter because it will be impossible to keep the current one going. So I really think that having a long and short-term goals, we work on both and make an effort toward really where we were a couple of years ago. We had a couple ideas. First, they came in with a real expensive one, and then a much less expensive one with different alternatives and different ideas. Settle on something, and then put our heads together and figure out how to get there in terms of raising the funding. That's really how all capital projects end up succeeding is having people dedicated and committed to doing it, and then exploring all possible options. And that's what I would urge. And maybe that's something we could take back to the county and to the cities. And I think we do have to go back to our respective jurisdictions.
Thank you, Chip. Any other comments?
I don't know if it's useful at all, but some of the ideas that the members are talking about are kind of built into this summary statement. And so the idea of fiscally sustainable kind of addresses both the short-term and long-term contributors of expense, and wanting to implement best practices that prevent costs from in the first place to the extent possible, and also deal in the most expeditious way with the costs that we do have. Community partnership was definitely intended to capture not just the partnership between the contract jurisdictions and the county, but also the public and local nonprofits that also make great contributions to animal services. And then in terms of best outcomes for animals and people, that definitely encompasses the idea of having a safe and clean shelter that is easier to maintain. Stephanie can speak much more eloquently to this, but having a less well-maintained building is it's harder to clean. It's more work every day to do that. And eventually it just won't meet our needs at all anymore. And so those are all kind of encompassed in here, but without specifically committing to a completely new shelter building versus any other approach to modernizing the facilities. Member Carson?
Yes, Joanne, I've got a question for you. I'm reading that vision statement also as being broad enough to encompass the less romantic portions of the work that goes on there, which is both dealing with deceased animals, but also dealing with animals that, due to illness, especially can pose a risk to people and that need to be contained. I'm reading this as consistent. Is that a fair reading?
Yes, I think so. Yes, it's to encompass best outcomes. And so that's everything from, fostering a baby kitten until it can be adopted out to making the difficult decision for humane euthanasia for terminally ill animals. So it encompasses all of the facets of animal sheltering and control, from rabies control to adopting out those baby kittens.
So I would just suggest, Mr. Shartz, you may have already taken care of it. Have we heard all public comment that people wish to offer on this item?
Let's ask for some. Is there any public comment?
Yes, we have one hand raised, Eileen Sametz. Let me allow her to speak.
Eileen?
Good afternoon, JPA members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I got in late because I had a doctor's appointment, so I haven't heard the whole presentation. But I mean, the short version of my feeling about what's going on here is that what I think really what needs to be recognized is, unfortunately, the needs of the animal shelter, the Yolo County Animal Shelter, for years has been neglected. I mean, I don't want to say that in an accusatory way. I'm just saying it has happened for one reason or another. The shelter has not gotten the funding it's needed to upgrade and to keep up. And because of the pandemic, it got hammered with having to withdraw services to the public. It's doing its in-house neutering and vaccinating the animals that they're trying to find homes for. The animal services is doing a heroic job of what they have to work with, and I find it a hard thing to hear that to say that a shelter is going to be a burden on the communities is really not fair, because it is a health, welfare, and safety issue to be able to provide services, including spay and neuter, vaccinations, including like rabies vaccinations, all of these services had to be dialed back because of the pandemic, as well as on top of years of neglect of having a shelter from like 50 years ago, not having the resources to upgrade. And I credit Stephanie with making great changes to work with what she's got. They don't have enough staffing. So I guess my message is, I of course would like to see a new animal shelter. It's been a vision, but regardless of what we do, we have got to improve our services for the sake of the animals and for the sake of the public. And I hope that I hear more positive energy towards that with this JPA, which is what with the intention of forming it, rather than everybody kind of backing away from the problem. So it's not just a matter of yes, Dan. While it was very nice that the DPAWS was given a little bit of money from the city of Davis, that was only for the pets of the homeless. That's only for 2 years. Okay, that is not addressing the needs of the public in general, of pets of animals of Yolo County residents, and it's not addressing trap, neuter, release needs, which is a really important need because that's the only way to control the feral cat populations. So I am just saying, like, you know, it's upsetting to hear so much pushback about the needs for what these animals have been neglected for years, and that we need more support from JPA, more positive discussion, more push forward of what we're going to do to improve the situation. And one last thing is that the vet school has a new dean who just started a few months ago. So let's not try to be expecting all negativity from the vet school. I think the vet school needs some pressure. I mean, I think we need to be talking to them and saying, hey guys, you're supposed to be the #1 vet school in the nation. Well, why don't you act like it and help out with you know, even your own local animal shelter situation? They're heading up Corette and they got all this money from Newsom. So let's see some positive energy from this group, please. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Well, I'm supportive of the vision that's been outlined. If there's interest and emotion for that, but I don't want to jump the gun.
I did have a suggestion, Dan. In reading this, it's animal services in Yolo County are a fiscally sustainable community partnership that facilitates the best outcome for animals and people. That's fine, but if there isn't adequate funding, then whatever is fiscally sustainable won't do much for animals and people. I don't think that's what was intended, but I think what needs to be added is to say animal services in Yolo County are an adequately funded and fiscally sustainable community partnership that facilitates the best outcomes for animals and people. Because then the goal is to make sure that there is enough funding and fiscal sustainability to the two halves of that picture then are complete.
Reaction to Jim's proposal?
Thumbs up from Mayor Cohen, and Mayor Vega has her hand raised.
Mayor Vega?
Thank you, Supervisor Sandy. So I'll just add, you know, I think the vision as is sits well with me. You know, that having something that's fiscally sustainable, just to me, kind of, I envision something that's going to be long lasting and it's going to have, I think, a better probability of being adopted by all of the cities, because we're all challenged. You know, something just reflecting again on the public comment, you know, I think that again, generally speaking, we want to do the right thing to take care of our animals, but we have so many other areas of need, and it's a matter of balancing all of the different priorities. So again, for me, I think that the statement as is, financially sustainable, speaks to me. The community partnerships, I think that it's gonna, I'm just listening to you, Supervisor Provenza, I hear you. You know, I certainly have seen things that are not adequately funded and it's not feasible, but, you know, I think if we can have this JPA be more positive to the comment of the public member, and also be more innovative, right? I think what is that necessity is something of innovation. I'm at loss for that saying is, but I do think if we come together, we can come something, but I think we have to stick to that fiscally sustainable. So
I
that'll be all.
wasn't suggesting taking out fiscally sustainable. I was suggesting adding 3 words, adequately funded and fiscally sustainable.
And I think that's reasonable, Carson here speaking. I think adding both elements, I don't think those things are a contradiction. I think they are compatible.
Mayor Vega, did you have anything additional at the moment?
Pardon?
No addition at the moment. I hear you.
This is what, going back to Eileen's comments, I wasn't trying to be negative. I was trying to be candid. But as someone who has been on the front lines of this for a long time, I'm just trying to be brutally candid with people. If this is what we're experiencing or we have experienced, that doesn't mean that it's definitive of the future, but it is what happens in a council chambers, every council that I've ever been in. So I'm wondering whether, what would you think about plugging in a public-private partnership as opposed to community partnership?
Chair, Sandy, Mayor Vega here. I would like that. I think we have to not be limited to community partnerships. I think we have to look at all options. So I think that should be added. I'd be supportive of that.
Same here.
Jim?
Yes, agreed.
So Wade, did we lose you?
Nope, I'm still here. I agree. Thumbs up.
That's something you've been in favor of for years. So what we'll do is we will add Jim's 3 words, and then instead of community partnership, public-private partnership, in a way of undergirding the fiscal issues there, just calling them out. There you go.
Supervisor Sandy, would you be open to changing that to community and private partnerships? We fully expect
Certainly.
that
Sure.
we're going to have community volunteers and community organizations that are going to
That's
help
fine.
fund and provide the services.
That's fine, Chad.
And then, Mr. Chair, I would just say, I don't think we need to add any additional wording, but to me, that encompasses the possibility of a more robust partnership with UC Davis, whether that be through some expansion of the existing partnership we have, whether that's through the grant funding that they're controlling. But I don't think you need to change a word to encompass that idea and what you've got here. Although if anyone disagrees with me on that and feels a change is needed, I'm open to it.
Are you comfortable with what's up there now, Dan?
Yep.
And just to make sure I've typed it correctly, I've got animal services in Yolo County are an adequately funded and fiscally sustainable community-private partnership that facilitates the best outcomes for animals and people.
It just should be community public partnership, or am I? Did something?
You're right. No, you're right, Dan.
Public-private community?
Community and public-private partnership, maybe.
Right. That's
Okay.
correct.
Editing in public is always awful.
Yes,
We're
Joanne,
relying
thank
on-
you for doing that. I don't like doing it. I commend you for doing it and trying to fit what everybody's saying, and thank you.
Of course. Animal services in Yolo County are an adequately funded and fiscally sustainable community and public-private partnership that facilitates the best outcomes for animals and people.
Right.
Great.
Awesome. Yay,
Okay.
woo. That's a big thing.
Good. Well done. We're going to say that reflects the consensus of the committee. I also wanted to build in. Jim had another suggestion, which was to have a short-term and a long-term perspective here, which I thought was important. Actually, I don't want to build that into the vision statement, but I would like it to color our planning from here on out. Because I think that the urgency of a short term will be advantageous for us.
Absolutely, because this vision statement is more of the 3 to 5 year horizon. And we can certainly capture more of that short-term horizon in addition in the mission statement.
Okay,
And so I can bring that up as well. We've got about 8 minutes left in our scheduled time. So we could end on this, or we could take a look at this preliminary mission statement just to get a feel for it and see if there's any just quick things that we can do to line it up with our vision statement. Okay. So this building upon a foundation of community partnership, the mission of the Yolo County Animal Services Planning JPA is to create a fiscally sustainable governance structure for animal services in Yolo County that facilitates positive outcomes for animal and human health and well-being through education, outreach, and implementing best practices in animal control and sheltering.
So
that's fun. Go ahead, Dan.
Jim was first, so I'll wait for the supervisor.
Well, I had a suggestion not to change wording, but to add additional wording at the end to say, including an animal shelter that will best facilitate these goals on a long-term basis. Now, that doesn't necessarily say a new animal shelter, but I think my views are clear on that, but it leaves room for other options, but it acknowledges that the animal shelter is a big part of our mission and a key to reaching our long-term goals.
So I have a suggested add-on to the supervisor's language that I would prefer to move more in the direction of examining the feasibility of improving the existing shelter or creating a new shelter. I got a lot of questions. I don't have answers at this point to know, how do we fund it? What will it cost? I've read all the prior studies that have been referenced. But for example, it interacts, and then the other element that's missing here is the potential, it's separate and aside from the language about sheltering, is an examination of creating, of seeking additional efficiency in shelter operations. I mean, in program operations, excuse me, not shelter operations. So we have ideas that we've talked about in prior meetings. Are there things we could do, as Ms. Sametz mentioned, out there on the frontier that reduces the demand for certain services here? We've talked about, is there outreach we can do through Facebook and other mechanisms and social media to not only bring in volunteers, but to, again, perhaps drive down these demands? Are there efficiencies we could consider in what particular tasks we assign to law enforcement officers? We need law enforcement officers to do law enforcement in this area, without question. The issue that the other studies that you pointed out to me have raised the question of, could you in some places supplant some of those functions with a public-private partnership? I think those are great questions, and can we take some of those studies and ideas and lay out a model of a way to do this differently that we could talk and think about? Those are the ideas I've been trying to drive in our monthly meetings. Those are the questions I've asked, and our county staff has been very helpful in providing credible and additional information that is moving us along. But as you've heard, there's additional work we need to do to explore, and I want to open the door to that further work. And this mission statement is a perfectly fine place to do that.
So how are you going to do it, Dan?
So All right, I'll try to wordsmith here on the fly and it'll be
Yeah.
awkward and.
Can I jump in, Dan? Because I think
Oh,
that's
please
already
do.
there. I
Please
think that's
do.
there. It talks about a governance structure that facilitates positive outcomes for animals and human health and well-being through education, outreach, and implementing best practices in animal control. I thought that was captured there. I thought
Okay.
what was missing was a reference to an animal shelter.
I'm welcome to what other people feel.
Mayor Vega?
Thank you. I have a suggestion. You know, in healthcare, we talk about the delivery system. So I was just thinking about adding on at the end, so and implementing the best delivery system and practices in animal control and sheltering, right? I mean, I think the delivery system can encompass a new shelter or a, you know, re-outfitting of the current one or a mobile shelter. I don't know, right? I just think that let's think about the whole delivery system. Again, thinking about healthcare, you have the hospital, the clinics, the urgent cares, all of those different, you know, levels of care. And I think delivery system encompasses that, and I think would be appropriate here.
That certainly moves in the direction that I was thinking.
So can you reflect that, Joanna, on the screen? Are you typing?
Is it frozen? I can't tell. I can't see anything. Can you guys? Oh, there we
She
go.
is.
So Jen, after best, it's delivery system and practices.
Okay,
I was just gonna say, I do see Jim's point.
okay, so you're okay with it?
I'm fine with this. I would, in terms of the supervisor proposed specific language at the end of this that commits us to a new shelter. And I would either like to see that language be cast as exploring the different kinds of facility options, or in the alternative, that's language we handle. And the next step below this, as I understand it, is setting specific goals of what we try to accomplish. And I have a little bit of a feeling that that last clause may fit better as a goal, the next step down, but I won't fight and die over that.
And Dan, that was intended to not to say that you have to build a new shelter. It's just including having an animal shelter that will best facilitate these goals on a long-term basis. So if it was concluded that a remodeled shelter would accomplish
Right.
that, then it would fall within that.
Right.
Okay, with that explanation, I get it.
Is there consensus around this statement? Is there anyone who can't live with it? Okay, then we're going to consider this as part of our proposed draft language, Joanna, and we'll move forward with this.
Wonderful. And
You'll bring these items back at our next meeting?
yes, absolutely. And the goals are just keywords pulled from this mission statement. So we should have all of the inputs that we need.
Okay, I don't want to fall prey to Lisa's contention that we're moving too slowly. So let's make sure have an expeditious program and we're making progress at every step then.
Very good.
Is that understood?
Yes. All right, and we are at our time for today.
Pardon?
One quick note before we conclude, we have contacted each of your city managers to schedule an update on the animal services data we collected in the last stage of this process. So we're working to try and get those presentations, if we can, during the month of April to each of your councils.
And Chad, can we include our vision and mission statement as a part of those presentations?
As it's drafted now, yes, and we'll let them know we're crafting goals, and if they have input, it's always good for us to hear from different jurisdictions so we can blend these together in a meaningful way.
Excellent.
And I'm going to encourage our volunteers to watch those council meetings or attend them to hear what sort of messages they receive and get back from that. Because it's important that we move forward in a candid manner. All right, anything else? Thank you all for your time today. Appreciate your hard work. Appreciate the public input.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you.